Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of our book study. They have uncrowned him. And we're going to get to the nitty gritty today about the liberal takeover at the Second Vatican Council. And if you're watching this on YouTube, this is, of course, a free preview of our book study that's available at Substack. Thank you to the people that have signed up for that. There'll be about 20 minutes or so that are available here. But if you want to hear the rest, feel free to click the link underneath. And a lot of interesting things to talk about today. A lot of people don't know, but one of Archbishop Lefebvre's greatest enemies was actually his cousin, another Lefebvre, a Cardinal Lefebvre, who was very much a liberal and who participated in the machinations to take over the Second Vatican Council and turn it into the thing that's been hotly debated ever since. In any event, before I continue, I want to talk to you quickly about something exciting happening in just a few weeks. In just a few weeks' time, the Sportsman Dinner, the 2024 Sportsman Dinner, is taking place in Marine City, Michigan. That's on November the 2nd, only 3 days before the election. So if things go insane at the election, this might be a nice thing to do to have a send-off before the apocalypse. And 100% of the proceeds from this event will go to benefit St. Joseph's Academy in Ray, Michigan. Tickets are $60 for a table. $60 or a table of 8 for $450. Dinner, top shelf bar, commemorative pint glass, all included. And there are raffles and games going on all night long. I didn't get to go last year to this, but I went the year before, and it's an amazing event. There are plenty of, I don't know what you're allowed to say on YouTube about things to do with hunting and whatnot, so I'm not really sure if you're allowed to mention the G word or the F word, not that F word, but the one that has to do with the things that go bang. But just put it this way, hunting paraphernalia, the things that you use for hunting are available as part of the raffles. And it's pretty great prizes, along with fishing stuff, camping equipment, all these sorts of things. If you live in the States and are coming, because a lot of people come from Ontario, there's an early bird raffle on the website for a particular implement you would use for hunting. Again, I don't know what you're allowed to say on YouTube about these things. I know they censor certain things. So anyway, you can catch my meaning. And only 52 tickets are available for that. If you're looking to sponsor the event, you can do so. And all of that information is available. Just to click the link underneath and you'll find all the info. And I don't need to tell you guys how important it is to support traditional Catholic education. And this is a growing school that needs your help. So check out the link for this fundraiser underneath this show. You can go to events SJA. So events St. Joseph's Academy .com for more details. There's an actual link underneath with my name on it, and click that. And you can get 10 free raffle tickets, which with each event purchased if you use that link. All right, I think I've covered everything. So check the links for that underneath the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's get into the topic at hand. So we're going to get to the book. I'm just going to bring that up here, make sure that I have the right thing open. I'm going to make sure that I press the right button because did I do it? I did. It's a miracle. It's amazing. I pressed the right button. So as you can see, we're at the part in the book now where we've gone from the explanation of basically how we got liberalism, what does it mean, how has it kind of started to spread in the church, and then now we're at part 4 of the book, A Revolution in Tierra and Cope, referencing, if you followed the other episodes or if you've read the Alta Vendita, this plan of the Masonic powers, the secret societies, the naturalists, right? We've talked about how, yes, it's important to know the details about certain parts of secret societies, but what do they all want? They want liberalism, they want materialism, they want naturalism, humanism, they want all these isms besides Catholicism. That's the most important thing. And the notion of a revolution in Tierra and Cope was in the Alta Vendita, which means taking over the papacy by imbibing liberal principles in order to dismantle the influence of the mystical body of Christ, the Catholic Church on earth. Okay, so here's what Archbishop Lefebvre says. He references a council in the past. And it's the Council of Ephesus, one of the councils of Ephesus. It's called the Robber Council of Ephesus, and he says it was presided over by an ambitious and unscrupulous bishop who, through the help of his monks and imperial soldiers, exerted an unheard of pressure on the fathers of the council. The presidency that the papal legates claimed was refused them. The pontifical letters were not read. This council, which was not ecumenical for that reason, ended by declaring as orthodox the heretic Eutychus, who upheld the error of monophysitism, one sole nature in Christ. And Archbishop Lefebvre goes on to say, Vatican II was likewise a robber council, except for this difference, that the popes that oversaw it, although present, did not oppose the surprise attack of the liberals with resistance, or at least very little, and even favored their enterprises. How was this possible? Proclaiming this council to be pastoral and not dogmatic, putting the stress of aggiornamento and ecumenism, these popes at the outset deprived the council and themselves of the intervention of the charism of infallibility, which would have protected them from all error. And that's a really important point. Why? Because people will say things like, hey, you can't say Vatican II has errors in it. What about the indefectibility of the church? Don't you know about what the ecumenical councils and the history of the church and so forth? Yes. But as Archbishop Lefebvre points out, and as many traditional Catholic commentators have pointed out, the key difference is that there is no appeal. There is no appeal to the charism of infallibility. And it just wasn't invoked. It wasn't invoked for this council. That's the main issue, isn't it? And because of that, it's possible. I mean, if something is not infallible, then it must necessarily at least be open to being fallible. That's just how things work. That's how language works. That's how the laws of reason will work. If something is not infallible, it could be fallible. Now, there are many things in the Second Vatican Council that are infallible because they are essentially repetitions of things from the past that are infallible. I mean, if a document of Vatican II says, the Trinity is the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, it's like, well, that's just an infallible statement because it is. And actually, Archbishop Lefebvre, I'm going to find a quick line for you here. I want to, before I read you something more, where is it? Did I lose it? Well, it's at the end of the next chapter we're going to read. And I'll just pull it for you on the screen here. Oops. And he says, I will limit my enumeration of the errors to these. I do not say that everything is bad in this council, that there are not some fine texts to meditate on. Contrarily, I assert with the evidence in my hands that there are some documents that are dangerous and even erroneous, which show liberal tendencies and modernist tendencies, which afterwards inspired the reforms that are now bringing the church down to the ground. I think a lot of people, when they think of Archbishop Lefebvre and the Society of St. Pius X, they have this very simplistic view that, these stupid rad trads, they don't like the new mass, so they don't think Vatican II happened or was valid or something. It's just not what the SSPX or Archbishop Lefebvre has ever said. And it's a very logical progression from not infallible to fallible. And if fallible, then possible falsehoods. This is just how the words make sense. This is what they mean when you use them, when you speak. All right, let's get back to the book. So I'm going to read a little bit here about what actually happened and how the council was taken over. And it's really important to read this kind of at length here. So forgive me, I usually don't read the whole page, but here I kind of have to. Excuse me, he writes, the Pèlerin magazine of November 22nd, 1985 reported some very instructive secrets told by Cardinal Liénard to a journalist, Claude Beaufort, in 1972 on the first general session of the council. I will read to you in extenso that article entitled Cardinal Liénard, the Council, the Apotheosis of My Life. I will content myself with bringing my observations to this. On 13 October 1962, the Council Vatican II holds its first working session. The order of the day foresees that the Assembly designates the members of the specialized commissions called to help it in its task. But the 2,300 fathers gathered in the immense nave of St. Peter's hardly know one another. Can they right away elect competent teams? The Curia evades the difficulty. Along with the balloting forms are distributed the lists of former preparatory commissions established by itself. The invitation to renew the same teams is clear. Archbishop Lefebvre inserts himself here. He says, what would be more normal than to re-elect the conciliar commissions, those who for 3 years had prepared irreproachable text in the midst of the preparatory commissions? Obviously, this proposal could not be to the liking of the innovators. So what's the context here? All of the bishops get there for the council. All of the bishops are showing up. Now you got to remember there's thousands of bishops there. They obviously don't all know each other. It's like, did you know everyone in your high school? If there was 1,000 people, no. Okay, there's thousands and thousands of bishops, different parts of the world. Most of them aren't going to know each other, but they have to elect essentially, who's going to be in charge of the various groups that are going to be putting together the documents and so forth. And this is part of the, let's use the term democratic in the right sense. This is part of the process of the various groups of bishops and how they work with each other and have that sort of sense of input, which has always been placed in the church. So, oops, my beard was on the microphone there. So what do the commissions do? Well, they say people aren't really going to know who to vote for necessarily. So how about we present them with the information about who was working on the council documents beforehand? Before the council, there's preparatory documents because there's a plan. And Archbishop Lefebvre was one of these people working on preparatory documents. They said, well, wouldn't it make sense if those chosen by the Pope to work on these documents, would that be in a position to explain the documents and implement them? I mean, this is pretty basic logical stuff. And this is what Archbishop Lefebvre says was the plan. This is how the council was supposed to go, just like it would make sense. But then all of a sudden something happens. And here he says, obviously this proposal could not be to the liking of the innovators. And this is back to Cardinal Liénard. On entering the Basilica, Cardinal Liénard was informed of this very ambiguous procedure by Cardinal Lefebvre. That's Archbishop Lefebvre's cousin, Archbishop of Bourges. Both of them know the great diffidence of the preconciliar commissions, their cast of mind very Roman, and not very much harmonized to the sensibility of the universal church. So the liberals believed that the commission used to write up the documents for Vatican II was way too Roman. That's a code word for, not being modernists. Anyway. They dread that the same causes will produce the same effects. The Bishop of Lille sits on the board of presidency for the council. This position, explained by his interlocutor judges, permits him to intervene to thwart the workings, to insist on the lapse of time necessary in order that the episcopal conferences may be able to propose representative candidates. So, Cardinal Liénard has a position of influence, and he says, I'm going to abuse my power to basically change the voting procedure to get us people on the commissions who won't be too Roman. So I want modernists. It continues. The liberals thus dread the Roman theologians and schemas. In order to obtain commissions of a liberal, new lists must be prepared, which will include members of the worldwide liberal mafia. A little organization, and at the beginning, immediate intervention will attain the goal. This is back to that article explaining what happened about Cardinal Liénard, the Pèlerin magazine article from 1985. 10 years later, this one Cardinal Liénard recalled his state of mind on that day in the following terms. So this is Cardinal Liénard speaking here. I was cornered, either convinced that this was not reasonable. I would say nothing and fail in my duty, or indeed I would speak out. So he's got this opportunity here to sort of change the direction of the council. We could not resign from our function, which was to elect. So I took my paper and I leaned over towards Cardinal Tisserand, who was beside me and who was presiding, and said to him, Eminence, I cannot vote. This is not reasonable. We do not know one another. I ask you for the floor. He answered me, That is impossible. The order of the day does not foresee any debate. We have assembled simply to vote. I cannot give you the floor. I said to him, then I'm going to take it. Let's just pause there for a second. So there's a whole way to work, a whole way of operation. You got to understand something. The council fathers, before the council begins, those on the commission, they know that not everybody has the ability to know who they should vote for in the sense of, having a time for a campaign like it's some sort of election. Of course, it's not like that. This process takes place for a while before the council begins. And then those in positions of influence, trusted by the Pope and whoever, make suggestions about who should be in what position. You have to understand the church kind of works like a monarchy, which is good. This is why historically there isn't a ton of radical instability and undulating, changes of power and things like that, except in times of really great crisis. So no one was under the impression that there should have been some sort of like class rep or school president campaign where you get to go around making speeches and say, vote for me. I'll promise you, more chocolate milk at recess or whatever. That's not what it's supposed to be like. It's supposed to be basically a formality, and there's nothing wrong with that. The point of having a time of voting is that if there are any sort of grave impediments that anyone can bring forth to prove why so-and-so should not be in charge, then do so. But it's not a popularity contest. Look how the liberals act. They act the same way. And this is why I can't understand. I understand that not everyone's a traditionalist, but some of the people who want to defend the Second Vatican Council, you have to look at the behavior of these liberals. Because we're about to read, what we just read, he goes up to the person in charge of the deliberations, Cardinal Léonard goes up to Cardinal Tisserand and says, or Bishop Tisserand and says, I want to, change the way this is happening. And he says, you can't do that. That's not what that's not what the plan is. That's not what's happening. And he basically says, to hell with your rules. I'm going to take the microphone and do what I want. That's just wrong. You can't do that anywhere. You can't do that at a local school board meeting, let alone in the Vatican, let alone at an ecumenical council. But that's how a Second Vatican Council begins. It begins with a coup. Just objectively speaking, there's a plan, there's a process, there's a procedure. There are individuals chosen by those trusted by the Pope over a significant amount of years of preparation. And then there's a formality of voting various individuals that are the will of the superiors who have been overseeing the process into their positions to ensure a smooth implementation with time for debate on the precision of the documents. That's how these things are supposed to work. Then Cardinal Léonard comes in and says, I'm going to hijack the council and I'm going to make it completely different by disobeying the rules of procedure. It begins with revolution. These are objective facts. You can spin it any way you want. You can say, well, yeah, but Cardinal Léonard was correct. He had better theology. Even if he did, it was still done in a usurpacious manner, which is evil. You can't do that at a school board meeting. You can't do that at your local. And you know what? I think one of the main reasons why this doesn't offend people is because of the myth of revolution. I think, I'm just thinking about that right now. I love my American friends and viewers and things like that. But revolution's not good. It's not good. Changing the order of how a society, whether it's a church or a civil society, runs based on essentially cavalier actions, that's not actually a good thing to do. It usually results in chaos. Well, what has it been in the church since this moment? It's been pretty chaotic, hasn't it? It's bad from the beginning. The Second Vatican Council is objectively steered in a direction of unfolding chaos from the very moment of this happening. That cannot be underestimated and cannot be emphasized enough. Let's continue with the book. He says, I cannot give you the floor. And I said to him, then I am going to take it. Wow. I got up and, trembling, read my paper. I immediately realized that my intervention met the anxiety of all those who were there. That's just his opinion. They applauded. Then Cardinal Frings, who was a little farther away, got up and said the same thing. The applause got louder. Cardinal Tisserand offered to adjourn the session and to give a report to the Holy Father. All of this had lasted scarcely 20 minutes. The fathers left the basilica, thus sounding the alarm for the journalist. They put together some fictional stories. The French bishops in revolt at the council, etc.